Savvy Business Radio, home to over 500,000 listeners per month, and runs in syndication on 8 AM/FM stations nationwide, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. Find out how we can help you get your message out in a bigger way. Call 732-474-7375.
Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. This is your host, Christina Nitschmann. Our first guest is YouTube star and corporate pilot Jim Sorsby, also known as Captain Moonbeam, joins us today to share his exciting adventures in aviation. Our second guest is Larry Overstreet, aircraft builder and pilot, sharing his dream to building a Sonex aircraft with his family. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio and our 5th annual Aviation Month. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. How about yourself, Christina?
I'm doing fabulous. And by the way, you have the cutest dog ever. It looks like a poodle mix.
Thank you.
And you know what? We have a poodle mix here. It's a Shih Tzu poodle Dachshund and named Henry. And I swear it looks like a duplicate of your doggy. What's his name? Or her name?
His name's Timmy. He's a spoodle or a cockapoo, whichever one you want to call him.
God bless him. He's such a sweetie pie. I see him a lot in your videos. Well, everyone who might not know who you are, you do a wonderful show, Captain Moonbeam, where you share your aviation stories, your trips around the world and the globe, where you're flying about, and also your everyday trips that you take for fun. So this is going to be a lot of fun. You're a corporate pilot. But before we go there, share a little bit with our audience how you came to being in aviation, becoming a CFI and a corporate pilot, and how you got into doing the videos and such.
Well, as far as getting into aviation, I mean, I have loved aviation since I was a little kid. My dad I worked for Delta, and he actually worked on the ramp there, and we got passes. And we would, for vacation, we would take family trips with Delta. And this was in the early 60s when the jets, the big airliners, were really coming into their heyday, and it just caught on to me. And then years later, I got for Christmas a free introductory lesson for pilot lessons. And I took my first lesson and just fell in love with it and just ran off with it. And I had actually, this was maybe when I was 27 or 28, I already had a career in retail, and I was an area manager for a company, and started taking these lessons. And one day they actually sent somebody down from the home office to talk to me. They said, what's going on here with this flying? Should we be worried? And I said, no. And then I went home and thought about it, and came back the next day and gave my notice and ran off to be a pilot.
Wow. How did your family first respond to it? I know they gave you your first introductory flight, but were they a little alarmed at 28 years old when you decided to take a new career?
Well, I had a wife and a little baby.
Wow.
So, yeah. So that was kind of sudden. We made it work, though, and in between getting my ratings and stuff, I got some part-time jobs to help make ends meet. But eventually it all worked out. I got my first flying job as a flight instructor. And, that's a really difficult thing for most people to do. And I would never, ever suggest that anybody do what I do, because sometimes things like that don't work out. It probably should have had a little more forethought and planning to it.
Yeah.
But I was committed. That's what I was going to do. And here we go.
Wow. So when you say it was hard, do you mean being a CFI was hard, or just starting late in life and getting everything, doing the part-time job, getting your ratings? You mean doing it like that? Yeah.
Really the part where, you have a family and you're supporting your family, and then you just quit your job and start taking lessons. That part. It's best to get it done as early as you can. For one reason, just the finances of it and the cost of it, because it's never going to get any cheaper than it is now. It'll always keep going up in price.
Yeah.
And you got to pay your bills while you're doing it. And it takes a substantial commitment if you're going to really jump into it 100%.
Oh my, yes. I've heard that from so many pilots. I mean, I started and I thought I came to the table with enough money when I started taking flying lessons. I came with $2,500. I said, that should do. And then when I showed up to my first flight school and they took me for a little ride, because they said, you'll need these headsets, you'll need a flight bag, you'll need this, a book. I walked out with my very first lesson spending $1,100 of my $2,500 and thought, oh, whoa, I'm a little over my head here.
See, I believe it. And when I took my first lesson, it was, I think, in '87.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I could get a Cessna 152 it was $35 an hour. And
Whoa.
I think the instructor then was $12 an hour.
Nuts.
There is no way you could do that today. You couldn't buy the fuel for it for $35 an hour. Yeah, and it just keeps on going, especially as you move up to the bigger aircraft and get on the multi-engine airplanes. Now you're really starting to talk about a lot of expense.
Wow. We've had other pilots on, of course, during Aviation Month, and they say, this is still like the best career ever. I wouldn't trade it. We've had Carlene Pettit on. She's a wonderful commercial pilot, flies to Airbus. And she talks about, hey, it might be hard, but if you really want to go for it. But what would you advise someone when you start hearing the prices? And I've spent like up to $50 for an instructor and $130 for the cheapest aircraft in the airplanes in my area in New York. What would you suggest for someone who wants to get started and it just seems overwhelming, the cost of becoming a pilot?
Well, I would tell somebody who is interested, first of all, it's a fantastic career. It's an incredible experience. And like anything with a big future to it, it comes with a cost. And you just have to buckle down and work through it and take care of that. But what I also say, with a little bit of a caveat here, is that it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
There's a number of people who are more in love with the idea of being a pilot than of actually being a pilot. Everything that comes with it. And I instructed for a long time. I instructed full time for 4 years, and I met a lot of people like that. And most of them would find out by the first or second lesson if it was for them or not. If they came back after the first lesson and they were like, "That was fantastic, I can't wait to get back," they were probably just going to go the full way. But then you would also get some people that would come back, and when they had that first lesson and they actually put their hands on that yoke, and it became obvious, in a certain sense, you were the master of your own destiny here.
Yeah.
It was not what they really thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And they just don't come back, or they may come back the next time and then that's it. They're gone.
Yeah.
And the few that were moving towards that, you kind of tell, by the time it came to the first solo, they were all gone. The people that were really motivated, this was what they wanted, this is what they loved, because you got to have a love for it. I will say that up front. If you don't have a love for flying, and you'll know right away if you do or not, don't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. And you have to gauge yourself. For me, I had just got very close to solo and I went out and had a really bad flight. I let and I was doing stalls and I was doing really good. I was recovering quickly. But I did a really poor stall that almost got me to a spin, and it scared me so much that was the last lesson I've ever had, actually. But, go on. Yes. I feel you have something to say. Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to step on you there.
No. That was just basically, I really just got scared so much. And I told everyone around me that money issues came up and whatever. But honestly, it was fear. And now I feel totally safe with my partner. He's been flying for 22 years. When I fly next to him, I feel like this plane's never leaving the sky. I'm safe. But I don't feel that way with me at the controls. Even though I still love flying and want to do it with other people at the helm, I'm not very comfortable with me being the pilot.
Yeah, well, I know somebody, a lady who took flying lessons, and this was actually, she had done this before I ever started flying. She took flying lessons, and she got all the way up to soloing, and she did her first solo, and she said she cried the whole way around, and she realized then this was just not where, where she wanted to be, and that was it. She stopped right there. But some people, it's an incredible, exhilarating, very uplifting experience for them. It's just a difference in how people are.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm also thinking is a really good thing to say is you were mentioning not this career of being a pilot, and there's many different careers in being a pilot. There's my one friend who, what is it called? When you go and drop one plane and bring it to another place, it's called ferrying airplanes, right?
Right.
Ferry pilot, yeah. A commercial pilot, a ferry pilot, you can work for the airlines, you can work, for FedEx. I mean, there's so many different type of aviation or pilot type jobs. But when you mentioned this isn't cut out for everyone, I think like talking to a lot of pilots now on Aviation Month, I've come to realize that the life of a pilot is not an easy life. Like my one friend Carlene says that we'll leave, a commercial pilot, we'll start our day at, say, be at the airport at 7 and we'll take off at 9 a.m. We're not, we're flying to Hong Kong or something. We're going to be in that airplane for like 10 hours and landing after I've been up for maybe over 24 hours and then getting to the hotel after like maybe being up, I don't know, 30 hours or something. It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that people don't understand is that your duty day might be 6 hours or so, but your actual, being on the ground and walking about and the things you have to do in order to make it happen is a much longer day and hard. I've seen you going out there and you've had a long day and you're having to go and have food out of the vending machine and all. And some people are like, I don't want to be living like that. So that's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. A lot of people, they want a job where they work normal hours. They work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and they know when their vacations are going to be, their days off. They know the hours are going to work. With the airlines, you can get a schedule, but even their schedules can be very disruptive to your personal life. Mm-hmm. With the type of work I do, there is no schedule. I could be have somebody call me right now. And all of a sudden, you're throwing everything in a bag and heading out to go somewhere else. Or you could be at home and that can happen. And that can be very disruptive to your personal life, to your relationships. There are a lot of people who can make it work. And you've probably heard of, AIDS. It's Aviation Induced Divorce Syndrome.
Oh, no.
A lot of pilots, get divorced. I've never been divorced. All of the people I currently am flying with have never been divorced, but it does affect relationships. And people need to know that, especially if, they already have a significant other and they're going to go into this career. But then again, you can also get pilot jobs that are very steady. I did some part-time flying with a company where all of their flying was Monday through Friday. They were home by 5 p.m., and they flew twice a week, and they had one overnight a year to a convention.
Wow.
That's kind of the perfect job to have there. Yeah. But, another thing about whether this is for you or not, because, one of the things I do on my channel is I show people parts of this profession, or actually it's more of a lifestyle probably than anything else, that you normally don't see. That people don't tell you about. You don't see it on the YouTube channels and videos up there.
Yes.
And that's all the other stuff that happens, because the flying part of it, you may fly for an hour and a half and sit for 3 days and then fly for another hour and a half.
Yes.
Or you may have a day where you do 5 legs in 3 different airplanes. Not with the airlines, you wouldn't have 3 different airplanes, but with what I'm doing, I may fly 3 different airplanes in one day.
Wow.
That kind of stuff, actually happens, and you have to be very flexible. But what I wanted to get at, also the other part of it is, with the airlines, they're a little bit different with this, because you have the crews paired. You may fly with one person for 2 or 3 days and not see that other person for a month or even longer. With the work that I'm doing, I have 90% of the time the same co-pilot. You may, and it's very realistic to think you may be sitting next to that person day after day, year after year, experiencing all sorts of experiences. So you need to be flexible and be able to get along with people. So that can cause conflicts right there, because you fly with some guy for 8 hours all day long. You go to the hotel room, spend 30 minutes in the hotel, and then you go have dinner with him. And then, you might go see a movie with him, and, you have breakfast with this person. I say him, but as a person, because, of course they're men and women, all sorts of different people in aviation. But the whole point is, whoever you are flying with in that situation, you're seeing that person over and over and over again. And doing all sorts of stuff. My co-pilot right now is Mike, and he's holding off on his lunch so we can do this. And that's not a big deal. I mean, he's an adult, he can handle it. And the other thing is, we miss meals too, like you said, eat out of vending machines.
Yeah. Yeah, very common.
I tell people. Oh yeah, I tell people when they're starting out, doing this, when you start putting snacks and stuff on the airplane for your passengers, put on there what you like, because that may be your lunch that you're packing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned that we've had a woman last year come in and talk about crew resource management. It's a term used in aviation, and it's really how to facilitate and keep the cockpit running in a way that everything operates for the best safety of the aircraft, but keeping all the resources, aka people and other things that keep the flight running safely, including managing different personality types and different people you might have to work with. And it takes on a whole new level when you're sitting in a cockpit with someone. And sometimes if you're flying for a long time, maybe an 8-hour flight or 6-hour flight, where you have to really deal in a high stress situation sometimes, and with people you might not feel all that comfortable with, or maybe not like as a personality type. And then, as you said, hanging out with this person that you might have to fly from place to place with, stay in a hotel with, and see each other in an intimate, different way than you would, say, if you go to a 9-to-5 job in a cube. You sit there, you see them for 6 hours, 8 hours, but then you go home and you in no way are interacting in a more personal level with them.
Well, now see, this is the funny thing about it. You think when you would go home, you would never talk to that person again till you see them a couple of days later.
Yeah,
it's not like that. Something will happen, and he'll call and say, "Hey, did you see this on TV? Did you see this in the news? Did this?" And you're also talking about trips and stuff like that. So you develop these relationships, which are really very close, and in some ways, emotionally intimate, because you're sharing, everything that is going on. And, sometimes my wife will say, "I can't believe he's calling. You just spent 6 days with him." I said, "Well, yeah, I did, but that's just life." And you find that, at least on my end of this, doing the charter and the corporate and the contract flying and all that, you find that some people will get into it because they were looking for a job, and maybe they were trying to go to the airlines, and at that time they couldn't get on, and you can tell right away this is not going to work out because occasionally you get the type of person that they need a schedule. They can't really deal with the constant change because you may land at one airport, and as they're getting out, say, "Hey, we're going to be back in 40 minutes, and we need to make a stop in Atlanta on the way home."
Yeah.
Or we're going to have somebody coming back with us unexpected. Can you make sure we got some food and stuff? All this stuff that you're facilitating and throwing together, because we're also problem solvers.
Yes.
We're facilitators. We push and keep things moving forward in many different ways. But stop me if I start getting off track and going off on a tangent.
No, you're absolutely not.
I tend to do that.
No, it's perfect, Jim. And actually, that's a good thing to mention. You keep bringing it back to the key word there, which is flexibility. And it's true. When it comes to this career in aviation, it is you have to be super flexible. And I don't fly as a career. I fly for pleasure. And my partner and I take all of our trips in an airplane that he flies. But it's not the type of thing. If you're thinking, "Hey, I'm just going to get an airplane and we know in exactly 6 hours I'm going to be in the hotel and we're going to be having fun," it's not like that, because anything happens. We're flying about, weather pops up. We've had a couple of, small things with the aircraft where we have to land and check out stuff and whatever. So it's not the type of thing, you just get in the car and you get there in 3 hours or 6 hours. A lot of things pops up, but that's part of the reason I love it, because the trips are so exciting. We never know what's going to happen. Every single flight's different, even if we've flown that route before. So for me, it's an adventure and it's exciting. It might not be my career, but it's something I really enjoy doing for fun.
Well, it is an adventure, and it is exciting, because it's very dynamic. Is what it is. I just have to say it's dynamic, constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what brought you to starting your channel, Captain Moonbeam, and deciding to document not only your trips as you actually fly about and showing people the ins and outs, but also when you take your personal trips? Like you took one not too long ago to New York City.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's kind of funny how this whole thing happened, because this was an accident, the whole thing. It was never intended. I had kind of experimented with the internet and made a little family blog and did some different things. And I guess about how many years? Maybe 8 years ago, Christmas was coming up, and all of our family extended family lived outside of the St. Louis area, and it was not convenient. I mean, the closest was 6 hours away, and Christmas was coming up, and I thought, you know what, I could use this YouTube thing and set up a channel or register, however it is. I hadn't figured that out yet. And I had a camera, and I thought, you know what, we could make some little Christmas videos and put them up for family. And my family was always very confused about what I did and why I couldn't just run down and do something with them or something like that. So I set up the channel, and I had one of these, like, oh gosh, it was like 640 by a very low resolution camera that took like 4 minutes of video. And my daughter and I made a couple of videos, and these were Christmas carols, and I put them up on YouTube. And for Christmas, you know, we maybe got 20 views. It was all family looking at these. I sent them the link. And then after Christmas, right after that, then I put up 2 videos, and all these videos were 20-second videos scanning across the cockpit, showing all the instruments with the radio in the background. It was like a Falcon 20 and I think a Falcon 50. And then, you know, I didn't check back on my channel for, gosh, I don't know how long it was, but then I got an email from Google, and Google said, hey, would you be interested in monetizing your videos? What the hell is this? You know, I had no idea. I had even forgotten the password to the channel. So I got the password, figured that out, went back in, and I had like 10,000 views on each of these 20-second videos.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, people really kind of are interested in this. And I put up a few more videos, which were just landings, and all I did was put my camera up on the glare shield, and they got views, and I started getting comments and people asking questions, and I realized, well, here's something that people really want to do. And I have access. I'm there, because that's the problem with getting video. You have to have access to this world to get the video. And I started just on trips making little videos, and I'm putting them up. And I used to fly with this fellow back then, Alex, and we did a little road trip, and I put that up. This was when we went to California. Had never seen the Pacific Ocean, and we had a day off. And so I thought, well, I'll put up some more little vacation videos for my family to see. And that's what it was. And the whole Captain Moonbeam thing actually came from my daughter and I sitting there. What are we going to call this? So I think of a fancy little title and call it Captain Moonbeam. But then it just kind of wasn't a rut. I just did the camera sitting on top of the glare shield.
Yeah.
And every time I put up a video, I'd get my wife to watch it, and my daughter, and they didn't want to watch any more videos. They said, it was basically my wife said, I cannot watch another landing video. You know, yeah, it's the hard truth, but it's true. Yeah. And I said, okay, I won't make you watch this anymore. But she said, you know, and I was not in these videos. I was always taking the videos. She said, you need to change. She said, people really want to see who it is that's doing this. I didn't believe that, but I did. Eventually she kept saying, I said, okay, I'll put myself in here. And when I did that, my views started going up. And I thought, well, heck, okay. And so she was the one that convinced me to do the vlogs. And that's when I started doing the vlogging. And I really got a good response from that. Yeah. And in fact, that response has been so good. I've had people walk up to me, different places, say, hey, are you Captain Moonbeam? Oh, yeah, that's me. Yeah. And that's basically how it started. Just sharing the experience with other people who wanted to see what it was like.
Wow. It's so amazing, this age of technology, because the same thing happened a little bit with Savvy, in that I was using it as a marketing tool just to get out there and talk, share my credibility in finance and such, and get together with other business owners. And then it exploded, just sharing the content with other people online. Within 6 months, we have 45,000 listeners. I'm like, where are these people coming from? I don't know them. But that's the wonderful beauty of the age of technology now, that we can all interconnect with each other and share our experiences and learn together. And may I ask, you said you and your daughter were sitting there thinking of a name. Why Moonbeam? What is Moonbeam, the significance of it?
I had just seen something or read something on the internet, and and it was like a Captain Moonbeam. Yeah, it was like a fantasy character somewhere.
Interesting.
Or something.
Wow.
I thought, well, that's, I'm a captain, and here we are singing songs. So, hey, that works. But it's not spelled out as the captain. It's just CAPT.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Capt Moonbeam, but everybody thinks of it as Captain Moonbeam. I don't even think CAPT is an abbreviation for captain.
Yeah. I see it quite often. So what brought you to New York City? Why the visit here? It was really fascinating getting to see through your eyes New York City. We live here, but it's fun to see other people experience it. What brought you to New York?
Oh, well, we did a trip. It was a 3-day trip, and we flew into Teterboro, and that's where most of the corporate aircraft either go into Teterboro or White Plains. And the middle day was just doing nothing. And my co-pilot and I, we were talking about, what to do because we'll, brainstorm on different things. And I had already thought, I have never really spent time in New York. I mean, I've been into LaGuardia, JFK, but we were right back out, that type of stuff. And I said, well, I would really like to go over and just walk around New York. And he's retired airline from, I think it was American. And he used to fly in there all the time. He said, man, I've had enough of New York. If you want to go by yourself, that's great. So that's what I did. I went down and talked to the hotel people, found out where the bus was, got on the bus, rode over there, and just walked around New York City for about 6 hours. And then came back.
Yeah, it's fabulous. I think we take it for granted when we live here that how much beauty and how exciting it is. Because I'm just like, I can't wait to go home. I think it's interesting when you have a life. Me, I consult in the city, and then I run the show. That you have a certain routine during the week. You come home, you be with your family, you eat dinner, and you forget about all the wonderful things around you. It's when you're a tourist and people come to town, they're like, I want to see this and I want to see that. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, okay, and then you begin to enjoy the beauty around you. So I'm so glad you had a great time.
I really did. In fact, I'd like to do it again. And I was thinking next time what I might do, because this is what Mike's my co-pilot. He wanted to go down to just south of Teterboro there. What is it? Hoboken? And go look around. And I thought, well, yeah, we could do that next time and then take the ferry over to New York. That would be fun.
It would be.
I've never,
I love Hoboken. It's fabulous. And when you guys come here, you got to look us up and we'll take you around. Yeah, we'll show you some of the cool stuff.
Hey, that would be great. Because I'm just a noob from the country, from the Midwest.
Yeah, we'd love to. It's always fun to show people around. And I want to thank you again, Jim, for coming to share your great gifts and wisdom today. It's been so fabulous. Share it with everyone where they can watch your videos and see your awesome trips that you take. Well,
I'll definitely be doing that because I love having people come along with us.
Yeah. So they can go to youtube.com at capmoonbeam.com, or is that how they find it?
It's on YouTube. It's CAPT Moonbeam. But actually, I think now it's to the point where either one that you type in, I pop up.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank you again. And tell your friend Mike, thank you so much for holding off on lunch. And
he's fine with that. It's not going to hurt him.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Jim, for coming to Savvy Business Radio for our 5th annual Aviation Month.
Well, thanks so much. And I really enjoyed it, Christina.
Hi, Larry. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio for our 5th annual Aviation Month. How are you?
Doing well, Christina. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. I mean, I've known you and your wonderful wife, Mary Beth, for many years. We met at Oshkosh, I believe.
Yeah.
And you're doing some cool stuff there. You are building your own Sonex with your family. And I think I told you before the interview that my little brother and I had a desiring when we were younger to build an aircraft, but we lived in New York City, kind of hard to do with a small apartment, but we were considering doing that. And so I thought it'd be fascinating for folks to hear, like, what is it like to build an aircraft? What goes into that? And what brought you to the world of aviation in particular? So share that with us, your journey into aviation, what brought you to building your own aircraft, all of that.
Sure. Well, there are a couple of loops in the story, so maybe I'll start with one of those. When my mom and dad first got married, they bought a big old Victorian house in Elgin, Illinois, and it was turned somewhere along the way. It had been turned into a 3-flat, so they ended up moving into one of the apartments, and they rented out the other 2. And along the way, different people lived there, but they rented out one of the apartments to a school teacher, a husband and wife. They were both school teachers, and they started building airplanes up there. in the apartment upstairs. And so when you talk about Manhattan in an apartment, if you're willing to give up a dining room table, you can make it happen. But anyway, so they built a couple airplanes, restored a couple airplanes, and I was probably 2 or 3 at the time. And they have some jokes and stories that now we tell, like when my dad would go up there and say, hey John, it's 10 o'clock at night, the baby's trying to sleep, can you knock off the air compressor for the evening? And him saying sure, and somewhere along the way he realized that he was going to get more work done on his airplanes if he let me hang around, because I was pretty interested. So some of the work happened up in his in their apartment, but a lot of the work ended up happening in the garage. And so there was a stool in the garage that I could sit on. Remember, I'm about 3 years old. And I could watch anything as long as my butt never left the seat. So that was, I blame John for my a little bit of my addiction to aviation, because it started so young. Wow. Fast forwarding many years, John Monette is the founder of Sonex Aircraft. And Sonex is based in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is about an hour and a half from where I live here in the Milwaukee area. And the airplane that I'm building is a Sonex. So that's kind of one of those loops that goes around. We'll get back to that in a minute. Yeah. But after that, they started their company and, built a lot of different designs. John is a very famous designer in the experimental aviation world. I grew up, we moved to a different house. I got to be, I think I was 13, and my mom always used to listen to WGN radio on the AM dial there in Chicago. And one of the hosts was a pilot, and every once in a while he would talk about some aviation things. And one of them was that you could get a glider ride and give it as a gift or whatever at Hinckley, Illinois, which is about an hour away from where we lived at the time. And so for my 13th birthday, I got a glider ride from my mom and dad and just loved it, fell in love with the thing. And so then when I turned 14, the following summer, found out that you could solo a glider at 14. And so that previous winter, I guess, I babysat and shoveled snow, and when I could, I would mow lawns or do whatever I could to get enough money scraped together to buy an hour or two of flying time. And so I soloed a glider when I was 14, and I got my license. I don't remember, I was 16 or 17. And during that whole time, I mentioned it was about an hour away, and my dad, who never flew but always liked airplanes, he was in the Air Force, a long time before that. He was the one who made it possible for me to fly by being the one who would drive me, every Saturday or every other Saturday when the weather was good, that hour down, an hour back, so I could have, a half an hour or whatever in the air for a lesson. And so he invested, untold hours and a whole lot of ice cream cones and hamburgers along the way to make that possible for me. He was also my first passenger when I finally did get my license. And so that was really fun too. About that time, I went, started in college and, ran out of time and money and all that kind of all at once. And then in 87, married my wife, Mary Beth. And that next spring, she said, you really enjoyed flying. You should check that out again. You should check into that again. And so with her prompting and prodding, it didn't take much prodding, but I just, she made it clear that it was okay. And that meant a lot. I went ahead and started taking power plane lessons at the local airport. And then for a job, we ended up moving to Arkansas, where we stayed for about 10 years. And during that time, I got my private license and instrument ratings. And then for those who care, there's high performance and complex endorsements that you can get. I got those kind of back at that time. But along the way, whether it was, John letting me sit there on that stool and watch, while he was, building, or my dad and mom, the investment of time and energy and money that they made, or my wife, or, the instructors, Ike, Dan, who you are, along the way. It was always other people making an investment in me, and that's what really made it possible. It took some money and it took some time for sure, but it was other people making these investments along the way. And I couldn't do that by myself. That was the encouragement and the camaraderie and other people who are kind of going through the same stage of training and all that, that really make aviation something that is, as far as I can tell, different from any other, hobby that you might have, or, avocation that you might have. I'm not a pilot commercially. I'm a computer guy, and it's kind of, that part's kind of boring, but aviation is one of those things that just brings everybody together. And I have friends who are, airline pilots and student pilots, and I have friends who are way on the right politically and way on the left politically. And, I have friends who, men, women, it doesn't really matter, all ages. But that love of aviation is that thing that really, bring everybody together.
Yeah. What I love about your story, and I love the circle of life here, your friend ending up owning a Sonex and then bringing you back into the fold here that way. And it's a close-knit thing, but what you mentioned that is so extraordinary is just not the people in aviation, which is definitely a deep community, which I've noticed much stronger than other fields of business and such, but that everyone in your life came to help you meet this goal. And that's one thing I think we all forget, is that any great endeavor is never created alone, whether it's people in your industry or the wonderful parents that grow you up and take you to, in my case, it was opera. So I loved music and opera as a kid. Every birthday, my mom would give me opera tickets to the Met. And I was so excited that I got to go to the Met and watch operas. Of course, I couldn't get any of my friends to come with me. But, it's when you have parents that are willing to make that investment for you, whether it's driving you places or giving me opera tickets, in my case, and then your wife being so supportive. I mean, I can't tell you how many people in whatever field of business they're in where they're either significant others, not very supportive of their ventures. And it makes a big difference. And you reaching for your goals and having them be a reality when you have that support system.
Absolutely. That makes a huge difference. And the friends you meet along the way, and the, really cool people who are striving to, get to the same goals that you are. All of those folks have a big impact on your life. And then you can start, giving back to other people too along the way. So. Yeah.
And I think we've touched on that in future aviation months, where we've mentioned that, hey, if you have a passion for aviation, a lot of the folks who listen in during aviation month are business owners. They might not necessarily have ever flown, but a good portion of them have a fascination with flight, as many do, even if they don't desire to get out there and get their license. But what I do tell people who are interested in wanting to possibly become a pilot is go out to your local airport, hang out with pilots. Pilots love to share what they love. And by you hanging out there, like you talked about, the community is what really helps you meet your goal. And so if you have that passion, that little inkling inside of you that you might want to try it, go to your local airport and connect with other pilots and other peeps.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a little bit worried about meeting people or whatever, that there's a lot of small airports across the country that at some point during the year will have a fly-in pancake breakfast where they invite the community in, and things like that. If you see one of those, jump on it. And like you say, if you just wander into an airport and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more. There's almost always somebody there that'll help you and point you in the right direction, give you the information you need, and share a cup of coffee or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really, really neat is we met at Oshkosh. I know you knew Brian before we met, but Oshkosh, I call it airplane heaven. If you ever had a fascination with airplanes, it's the place to go. It's 7 days of airplane bliss. There's not only workshops to learn more about different aviation fields or parts of aviation. You can rivet an airplane, you can build a wing, you can take different aeronautical workshops, you can see air shows throughout the day, meet other pilots. It's just the place to go if you want to find out more about aviation. And you won't feel out of sorts just coming there to ask questions, because everyone there is there with the same fascination, and that is the fascination and the love of flight.
Yeah, absolutely. Oshkosh, the numbers vary that I hear, but I think this last year was somewhere in the neighborhood of, 10 or 11,000 airplanes on the ground over the course of the week, and 500,000 people there. And so, it's just stunning how big it is. In different parts of the country, if you're down in the Southeast, Sun and Fun is a whole different kind of air show, but, some similarity. And then across the country, the AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, has a number of fly-ins. And then, just down to the grassroots of every little airport having their own little, pancake breakfast. And there's one that we like to go to here at Palmyra, Wisconsin. And every Father's Day, they've been doing it for, 75 years or something. Every Father's Day, fly-in pancake breakfast. And, so you see people there. A couple weeks ago and last weekend, as we're recording this, we went to Blakesburg, Iowa, and then to Broadhead, Wisconsin, to antique aircraft fly-ins. And, people are just so hospitable and so happy to show you the airplanes that they've poured, time and energy and love and money into and to restore them. I got to fly in a 1929 Fairchild last weekend, and it was just, amazing. And it looked like it was just brand new.
Wow. What was the experience of that? Because it has way less instruments, I'm sure. How did it feel? How did it perform? What was it like compared to, maybe a Cub or one of the more modern airplanes? Sure.
So I fly Piper Cubs, like you mentioned. I fly them a lot too. Typically, the ones that I have access to were built between 1939 and 1945 or so, maybe 38. Wow. And Fairchild was built in 29, so it's like almost 10 years older. It was really fun, open cockpit, high wing, very basic controls. Flies a lot like a Cub in a way. It's a little bit heavier, a little bit more power, but not a lot. The Cub I fly is, I think 85 horsepower, and this is 125 horsepower. So, it's not, dramatically overpowered or anything, but just a really fun experience. Almost like being on a motorcycle where, you kind of get your head in the right spot behind the windscreen and you don't get buffeted by all the wind. But if you kind of lean your head to the left or right a little bit, you have all that wind noise going by your ears and stuff. But really fun, just a great experience. And more importantly, the people who are involved there are just, super excited to share their love of these antique aircraft with anybody who's interested. So, whether it's old airplanes like that or home-built airplanes like I'm building in my basement, or, the brand new ones, or light sport aircraft, or, warbirds, or whatever, there are these subgroups in aviation of people who just really have a passion about that particular style of aircraft, or maybe that era. They're just more than happy to share it with people who are interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so fun. And that's one thing we talked about in the beginning of the conversation, how there is so much community aviation, special general aviation, that it's just built on the essence of community, which is so important.
They always say about like a place like Oshkosh or some of these bigger shows, you come first for the airplanes the first year, but then you keep coming back for the people, because by and large, many of the same airplanes are there year to year or whatever. But it's just those, for me, we call them the Oshkosh friends or whatever, where it's once or twice a year. And it's usually when we get together, up there for that show, and sort of the airplanes and the show, those are all the excuses for getting together. But the real reason for getting together is to hang out and spend a few days or a week with, great friends.
Yeah, I get
like
you.
You guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We loved hanging out with you guys, and we met you last time at Camp Bacon, which is totally awesome fun. It was the first time I got to hang out there and have some yummy bacon with you guys. But that's another thing about Oshkosh. If people realize, hey, I'm not a pilot, so I shouldn't come down there, there's quite an enthusiasm with the camping community coming on down, because a big portion of the airport is distributed for campers. So pilots or otherwise come on down there and they camp out for the week, and either you sleep under your wing or you have a wonderful Winnebago or a big tent. You come on down there and you have a whole bunch of fun.
Absolutely. I've heard different numbers, so don't quote me on the details, but you get the idea. Camp Scholler is the campground that's on the grounds there on the airport for tents, campers, motorhomes, people that aren't camping next to their wing, next to their airplane. And I've heard somewhere between 40 and 60,000 people camp there each year. Yeah. And so that's, if that was a city, that would be the third largest city in Wisconsin after Milwaukee and Madison. So for 1 week, it springs up out of the ground and everybody's there, and then a week later, just like Brigadoon, it disappears. Until the next year. It really is fun, and there are. I kind of think of them as neighborhoods. Like you mentioned, our area that we camp in is Camp Bacon. and it's kind of a lot of the same people back year after year after year. But there are others. You go to the west of us a little bit, and you have this whole row where it's all the South Africans, and they've got something like 40 or 50 tents. And they fly over together and hang out there, and and there are these other neighborhoods like that, kind of around of groups of people that you get to know, year after year.
Yeah. There's one awesome guy, which I know you know him, who brings a big coffin full of beers, and everyone contributes. They bring beers from around the world. Pilots come with their own beers from wherever they're from, whether it be Australia or California, and then they all sit around sharing each other's beers from different locations.
Yeah, the rule is you bring a beer, you take a beer, and kind of the understood rule is it has to be a nice beer. It can't be like a I don't want to say any brands, but yeah, exactly. It can't just be an off the shelf sort of a thing. It needs to be, kind of a good beer that you'd be proud to share with somebody. But yeah, it's an old casket that somehow he came in possession of, and never been used, I'm told. Yeah. But he ended up lining it with styrofoam and kind of making it so that it would hold the ice well. And it comes out, in the evening. They have it under a tent, and then they open it up each evening, and people come by. It's quite the stop.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's a way for everyone to create community together, share their different experiences, whatever beers that come from their region. But you mentioned before how you met such wonderful contacts, both in the business arena, in the tech arena, and in the aviation arena through flying about the country. And I found for myself, here we are on Savvy Business Radio, and it's our 4.5 years where we've been on air. And it's been fascinating in that because my wonderful partner, Brian, is a pilot, we've flown around the nation and seen and gotten to meet a lot of our Savvy audience who are not even pilots, some of them. But that is one of the gifts of general aviation. So if anyone has had an inkling to want to travel the world, this is their way to go to unique, kind of maybe out of the way places and maybe see friends and family you've not gotten to see. So it's one of the great gifts of general aviation.
Absolutely. And from, I'm a business owner, and from a business point of view, there are so many more smaller airports than airports that are served by the airlines. Mm-hmm. And so if your business is talking to, small to mid-sized companies like much of mine is, and you need to go and visit somebody, the thought of getting in an airplane, I'm in the Milwaukee area, right? So I might need to get in an airplane, be there an hour ahead of time, go through security, hope I get to the gate on time, take, a half an hour or 20 minutes to fly all the way down to Chicago, where I spend another hour or 2 or 3 waiting for a connecting flight, to go to some other hub or whatever, and then still have to drive an hour once you get there. And you're exhausted, and you hope your luggage is there with you, whatever. Whereas, now I'm a member of a flying club over in Madison, Wisconsin. I'll, schedule a plane, go over, toss my stuff in it, don't have to talk to security or anybody else. Mm-hmm. And, I can fly to within minutes of where I need to be on the ground. And it's just so much more convenient. It's such a time savings, within a certain profile of trip, that I try to do that whenever I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, Larry. I've had some past guests where I tell them that my partner and I go flying all the time. They're like, and they're actually looking at a map saying, where's the nearest airport near my house so we can get together? And it's been, it must be 5 or 6 people that we've met that have been past Savvy guests where we've gotten together, and then we go flying together, and they get to experience the joy of flight themselves. And so, it's such a enriching experience. But, another thing we talked about, which we didn't hit yet, is how the gift for me of flying has been learning preparedness in life and in aviation, because there are situations where things will come up and you might not just be as prepared as you needed to be or expected to be. So that has been a great lesson for me. Has that happened in your own life for you?
Yeah, sometimes in small ways and sometimes in bigger ways. There's a joke in aviation of, time to spare, go by air. Because on the flip side of what I was just talking about is that, sometimes things do come up, weather happens that's beyond the capability of either, me as a pilot or the aircraft that I'm flying. And so, you just have to have a little bit of flexibility built into your schedule. Mm-hmm. But I had just a quick example of that. I was flying down to Arkansas. This is a couple winters ago for to meet a client that is down there, and spent time. It's the middle of the winter. It was really cold. A lot of ice down there, and down there ice is more of a problem than snow is for us up here. Mm-hmm. And so we got done on Friday afternoon. Got back to the airport. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock, starting to get dark because it's wintertime, and everything's kind of shut down. And I realized I had a flat tire.
Oy.
So I fortunately got someone to come from the airport over just as they were heading out and pump up the tire, and that was fine. And I figured, well, maybe it just went flat because it was cold, so cold, you know. And I taxied out to the end of the runway where we were going to do the run up. And I don't know if Christina, you've probably seen this, but sometimes when you get to the end of the runway, you sort of pull off into a paved apron area where you can sort of make a 180-degree turn and point into the wind and get ready to do your engine test, the run up. And so I did my 180-degree turn, and it just kept turning. And I realized that in the time that I had gone from the parking area over to the end of the runway, my tire went flat again. And so I'm sitting out here on the end of the runway in the dark in Arkansas. Everybody's gone home, you know, and all I can do is go in circles because the tire's completely flat. And so short version of that story is we made a few phone calls, and someone was kind enough to come out and help us get a new, you know, it turned out to be an inner tube problem. Get the inner tube patched and get me back in the air so I could get back up here to Wisconsin, and I'm grateful for that. But now we carry a spare tire and a spare inner tube in the airplane. You know, so that's one of those little things that happens along the way. And you know, we at least now we have the parts if we can find a mechanic with the right tools to help us change out something like that. You know, but there's other things that people don't think about, and so it may be, you know, just the right kind of clothes to stay warm or stay cool if you end up landing unexpectedly somewhere where you're not not planning to be, you know, where your rental car isn't located. They say, though, you know, one of the best tools you can have is a good credit card, you know, because you might end up staying in a hotel or needing a car or whatever, you know, that you weren't planning on, needing an airplane repair potentially. But, you know, that's sort of all the kind of airplane mechanical-y stuff that can happen. But also, you know, just from a mental standpoint and a preparation standpoint, I think there's a lot that you can do in terms of keeping your head in the game with aviation or with business. And sometimes that's, you know, staying current in your training, grabbing an instructor and saying, hey, I just haven't done this certain thing. Maybe it's a crosswind landings, or maybe it's instrument approaches or whatever in a while. Let's just go do some of that. Likewise with business. I mean, there's a number of business podcasts that I listen to that just help me keep my head in the game. Whether it's from a sales perspective or a running a business perspective or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, just keeping yourself, as you say, your mind in the game, even if you're not actually in the game, you're keeping your mind active and present in it. I mean, for me, it was like practicing at the sim all the time. By the time I actually took my first flying lesson, my flight instructor said, "You've been practicing on a sim, haven't you?" I can tell because you're actually using the rudder when most people aren't using the rudder. Because I actually bought rudder pedals because I wanted to actually be able to use all the control surfaces when I got into an airplane. But no, it really helped. And he told me I can tell the difference when someone's practicing at home as opposed to someone who just isn't. And it makes a huge difference to actually getting through as quick as possible and getting your pilot certificate if you do that sort of thing and prepare ahead of time. But, you know, this reminds me because early on when I started to leave my airport area, you know, just around the New York, or I was practicing out of Caldwell, New Jersey, that, you know, it was very safe. I know the area very well. We go to a practice area. But when we started venturing outward, and like me and Brian would go to maybe West Virginia for dinner, when we first started making trips like that, long cross countries, like I'm thinking New York attitude. I'm thinking New York is open all year, all night long. You know, I came with the mindset and the brain that the rest of the
city that never sleeps, right?
Yeah, right. Never sleeps. So here we are going to West Virginia, and it's Christmas time. This is another Christmas story. Yesterday I told you another one, but we went off there for I think around Christmas time, and we went to have some dinner, and we landed, and they said, the lineman, the person that serves gas and helps you with your airplane, said, "Would you like anything?" I said, "No, we don't need gas right now. We'll get it after dinner." So we go into this little, you know, eatery diner type place on the airport property, and we go get some food and we're chilling. Then I didn't realize that normally this place closes at 7. So does the entire airport. They're there that night for an EAA Christmas party. That's what kept it there longer. So we finished about 9 p.m. We pay our bill. We go outside. It was a kind of door when you leave the premises, the door locks behind you. So we leave the restaurant. The door closes behind us, and right after it closes, I was like, "Ooh, I have to use the bathroom. But I go to turn around and the door's locked. And I'm like, oh, great. And then all the lights around me in the, inside the restaurant and the airport property all shut down. Like the lights went out. I was like, oh no, I can't go to the bathroom. and we needed gas. We had enough gas for about 40 minutes, but we needed some gas. So I was like, what do we do now? So we we took out our airport directory and we started looking for airports in the nearby area. But I still had to use the restroom really bad. So I took out my flashlight and I said, I'm going to do SOS to the people up there, believe that someone will give the message to open up the door for me so I can use the bathroom. And so I started.
Smart.
I was like, it came to me. I was like, let's try this. It didn't work. In fact, someone came to the window of the restaurant, looked down at me, and then closed the window curtains and left.
Oh, no.
Gee, thank you, dude. But, Brian was wonderful. He was calm. He just said, no worries. Hagerstown, Maryland airport is really close by, about 10 minutes. Can you hold it? I said, do I have a choice? Let's jump in this airplane and go there. And we did. And I didn't have any problems. I made it. And then we landed. And it was a beautiful airport. They served me cookies and popcorn because they were closing for the night, and was able to use the bathroom. But it made me realize another preparedness thing is to pay attention to all the bits like that. Now when I'm even going to go out as a solo cross country, remembering that, hey, not everyone operates like where my hometown is, different time zones. Think ahead of time. What are the things I have to pay attention to? So that was a really interesting experience that reminded me of being more prepared. Small
town airports are, wonderful places, but they do roll up the carpet sometimes.
I know. Yeah, it was a great experience. It was a good lesson. But what would you say of all the time you've spent in the cockpit has been your greatest lesson learned in the cockpit?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I think maybe tying into the preparedness thing is if you aren't comfortable with something, don't do it. And so if you're prepared and you're comfortable with it, whatever it is, whether it's a cross country that's a little bit longer than something you've done before, going to a new airport, or whether it's, instrument conditions and you're going to go to an airport that has a certain forecast level of visibility or whatever that you're not comfortable with, even if you're rated for it. It's always great to live to fly another day. And, I've seen so many times where the day is really crummy and you could go, but boy, it's just right at the edge of kind of where your skills are at in that. And then the next day it's gorgeous and sunny, So it's like I can create enough flexibility in my schedule or whatever that I don't have to go, and push the limits in an unsafe way. It's okay to push the limits in a stretching way when you've got maybe a safety pilot along or an instructor along or whatever, so you can learn, to have more skills. That's great. But when you're pushing the limits in a way that's unsafe because you feel this urgent need to get home or, to get somewhere or be at a meeting or whatever, that can be really disastrous. And so, I think recognizing your limitations and not pushing them beyond where you safely can go on this day, on this flight, in your current condition, meaning have you just worked all day and you're kind of tired, or are you fresh? Is it morning and you're feeling really good? And just recognizing those limitations of just circumstance, and they may change day to day, and being cautious not to let too many, they kind of have this story in aviation about the links of an accident chain. And when you start recognizing, hey, this is a problem or that's a problem, or I missed that radio call or whatever, those start to be links in this chain that, if you let it go too long, could be the accident report, of how you died.
Exactly.
So, just starting to recognize those signs early on, I think, and then making good decisions based on those is probably one of the more important things I've learned. I don't know if it's maybe, an exciting thing or not, but I'm still here to have this conversation with you. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties into everything in your life. I mean, I now think about that for anything I do, whether it be in my business or anything. Is this something I, for one, have the skill set, or is it something I can push myself a little bit to, broaden myself? Because that's one thing. If you are too comfortable with everything, you're not really growing. So yeah, push yourself. But the thing about aviation though, is that it can be a life or death situation. So too many mistakes piled on top of each other can lead to, well, a crash and your ultimate death. So whereas in other parts of your life, you'll have a bunch of errors and a bad day, but you won't be dead. So
Right.
yeah, but that lesson can go across to all parts of your life, including business. And this has been so fascinating having you out here today, Larry. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Christina. It's great to talk with you again.
You betcha. I want to thank you again for coming to Savvy Business Radio and our 5th annual Aviation Month. Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.